So our next speaker is Jeffrey Henning, and for those of you who don't know Jeffrey, you should get to know him. He's a great guy, experienced in the industry, and he's going to be talking about content marketing. He's one of the researchers out there who knows his stuff backwards and forwards about research, but he's also been a pioneer when it comes to marketing. He's a personal mentor of mine. He started several companies. His current company, which is rocketing off the ground right now, is called Researchscape International. And without further ado, I'd like to present to you Jeffrey Henning.
Thanks, Dana. So Stephanie talked about online dating, and she actually gave an interesting example, which was that Match.com was the big one, and then OkCupid has really come to the fore. OkCupid almost went out of business. Does anyone know what saved OkCupid from going out of business?
Their insights blog.
Their insights blog. So content marketing actually saved them, enabled them to grow dramatically and sell. So their blog, if you had never read it, was data mining. It was one of the first data mining blogs. They were data mining what people were looking for from a matchmaking site. So for instance, it found that for women aged 20 to 40, the sweet spot of men's profiles that they were looking at was 35 to 41. Now for men from age 20 to 40, the sweet spot of women that they were looking for was 21. So it's actually a fascinating blog because it's usually behavioral data. So it's using behavioral data, it's writing about interesting insights into the human condition, things that we probably knew were true, and oh my gosh, they are true. The tough part was explaining to my wife why I had an OkCupid account. my wife is 24 years. So content marketing has really helped a lot of companies gain attention that they wouldn't have otherwise. It doesn't always work though. I'm going to give you 3 quick case studies. In the first case study, it happens all too often. So a company is like, hey, we need to embrace this whole social media thing. We need to do a blog. They started with some fanfare. Then they start posting to the blog less and less often. They're not really promoting the blog from other things. It's not generating traffic. It's not generating leads. And for this one case, they had a blog. They had invested in it a little while. And they gave up on it. And when I went back, all traces of the blog had been surgically removed from their website as if it had never existed. And there was a company here in New York that was recommended to me by my client, great for low incidence work. I went to it last week, wanted to check their blog, see what they were up to. Their last blog post was February 2013. So it's hard to make this commitment and stick with it. But what happens when you stick with it? So this case study, it was a merger of multiple companies, and so they were rebranding because they were bringing these different companies together. And unfortunately, the CMO completely screwed up the SEO of merging these domain names, lost all their SEO juice, search traffic dropped, she lost her job. And then they were desperately looking for, how are we going to get people to link to our site? It was a B2B site, so people aren't just going to be randomly linking to it from Facebook. It's not that exciting. It was kind of a brochureware site. But they invested in a blog, posted weekly. The first month they had 100 visitors. But they stuck with it over the years, and by the 4th year, it was generating 50,000 viewers, 50,000 unique viewers a month. They actually were able to trace 6-figure sales to it, and it helped position the company for acquisition. So it was a dramatic success story. They were making an investment of about $100,000 a year in content. So it was something that they stuck with and committed to. Oh, you know what? I gave you my favorite case study. So that was case study 3. So case study 2, what happened in this one was this was a small research firm, about 10 people. They had a salesperson. Sales really declined in 2008 because of the crisis. The owner was a good guy, didn't want to let go of the one salesperson right when times were tough, thought he would stick with them, stuck with them for another year, didn't turn around the business. And so finally, even though they'd worked together for many years, they parted ways. And as the sales guy was leaving, he was like, you really got to think of this inbound marketing, content marketing thing. Why don't you try it? And so he hired a young kid, 24, 25, to start blogging. And basically for 2010, he was like, look, I'm going to pay your salary to just blog. I'm not expecting any return on investment. I want you to learn our industry, and I want you to get this started, and in 2011, we'll start to see where it goes. And where it went for them was it became a primary way of generating very qualified leads. So to the point where after the first year, they would get leads. The people would have been to the blog. They would have understood what this research firm's strengths were. How projects typically went. What were the things they needed to think about. So they were highly qualified leads, very far down the sales funnel and closed from the inside. And now that company, that's all it does, is it no longer has a traditional sales force. So those are 3 case studies about why content marketing is so important. This was an example of that last case study where they stuck with it, and one of the things they did is they started to see returns, was they wanted to take it to the next level, and they went from posting weekly to posting daily. So every business day of the week, they had a new blog post, and traffic dramatically increased as a result, 7 times increase. This is from Hubspot. So I'm in Boston, HubSpot's in my backyard, so I got to see them grow through the years. All 3 of these case studies are HubSpot case studies. They're all from the research industry. And they looked at the effectiveness of leads, and using the HubSpot platform. If you're using social media, blogging, and the effect that has on SEO, you're all seeing more business as a result of that. So the biggest question that I get asked is that people will get it. Okay, if we blog more, we're going to have more pages that are interesting on our site. Our search rank for keywords that we care about is going to go up. But the biggest tactical question that people have is, how do we come up with what to write about, and to write about it week after week, day after day, and stick with it? So that's the #1 question that I get, and so that's what my goal is to answer here in this session. And the analogy I'm going to use is that we need to think about it as a process. So I'm going to walk you through it as if it's a factory. So think of it as a content factory. You're doing your R&D about what products you're going to build. Your products are your posts. You have your warehouse where you're storing lots of raw materials. You assemble them. You have a team building them. Some capital expenditures that you put into it, and then what your physical plant looks like. So if you have 10 ideas for a blog post, raise your hand. Oh, great. Usually when I ask that question, 2 hands go up. So that's phenomenal. So we've got some people here who have developed a process to blog. And you can see that the more often you blog, the more likely you are to have a blog that generates sales. So multiple times a day, 100% of those HubSpot customers have generated sales through their blog. So these were new customers using HubSpot, what rhythm they were in. Now, a lot of people, there's nothing worse for me as a writer than sort of opening up Word, getting that new document, and it's blank. Word count of 0. And the way that I get around that is I have things that I paste into that document that I'm going to rewrite. And so before we get to a blog post, I'll have notes that I've developed in some detail. And before I get to notes, I'll have ideas, which might just be a snippet, an idea for a title, or so forth. And by going through each of those, I'm getting to the point where I develop a blog post. The other thing I think that's tough about this for a lot of people is they think it should be inspiration. So we see a cartoon character, a light bulb goes off over their head. That light bulb represents instant inspiration. Somehow that idea came to them for something they're going to write about. Well, that's not how inspiration typically works, and that's not even how it worked for Thomas Edison. So Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb like that. There already were light bulbs. They just burned out after an hour and were a lot more expensive than candles. What Thomas Edison did was if you've ever seen his lab in New Jersey, was he had 1,000 different things that he tested, trying to find the filament that would burn for a long time. So it really was 99% perspiration there and 1% inspiration. He was working through a lot of things before he identified the filament that made a light bulb that was cost effective. So we really have to think of this not as creative inspiration when inspiration strikes, but as a process where we're working through lots of ideas. So an idea. So I have, I've done it in different ways over the years. I'll show you some different examples. But ideas can be as short as a tweet. So I had an an idea for a title. Dunbar's number is nonsense. I'll get into what Dunbar's number is in a little bit. It just came to me that was a blog post I wanted to write. I didn't have anything else about it. I had met Gene Bliss, who's an author and customer experience consultant, at a conference, and I wanted to write about some of her work. So that became a note. I saw that SMR had updated their code on social media research, so I wanted to link to that and maybe write about that. Quote that I love, "The future's here today. It's just not evenly distributed," from William Gibson. I wanted to work that into a post. And then I might have a cartoon that I like, a question, a chart, a graph. It's just the raw material. And so I keep it all there so that when it's time for me to write a blog post, I have something to look at. So where did blog posts come from? At the time I first wrote this, I had 538 ideas in my spreadsheet of ideas. I had 50 that I had kind of turned into notes, of some detail. And so then, I had something to look at for writing tomorrow's blog post. I had a lot of places that I could go to, a lot of different directions. So for this blog, what we did was we looked at all of the SEO keywords that we were interested in gaining traffic on, and those became the major categories that we were going to use to categorize all blog posts. And so then as ideas and notes came in, I would file them under these different ideas: research on research, online surveys, panel management, and generated ideas for each of these keywords. Whatever technique works for you, there's Evernote. There's lots of different things that you can use to organize this. I've used Word, I've used Excel, I've used Google Docs. Looking through the organization, one of the things you want to do is develop content that's going to answer questions for your prospects, depending on where they are in the sales cycle. So as you get asked questions from prospects, or maybe you interview your sales team, what are some of those questions? Maybe those would be good topics for blog posts. We should write up how they go. Questions from customers, what's it going to look like once we kick off the project? What do the deliverables look like? Maybe you have a unique selling proposition around one of your deliverables. You turn that idea into a blog post. Ideas from coworkers, social media conversations. Sometimes you'll see things on Twitter or from another blogger, and you'll be like, that doesn't work for us, here's why, or that's a great point, but it forgets this. And so that can prompt one. If you have a community of your own customers that you can mine. And then sometimes, and I'll talk about this a little later, doing your own research that you're going to turn into a series of posts. So there's lots of places for ideas. I often find that the act of writing a blog post gives me ideas for other blog posts. So sometimes, especially if it's a site where we're really concerned about SEO, as I write the blog post, what will happen is there'll be a phrase in there that I realize I really want to link to another article on our blog that has that phrase. Maybe it's Customer Experience Index. But I haven't written a blog post on Customer Experience Index. So sometimes I'll take that post that I've just written that was supposed to be tomorrow's post, and I'll set it aside because I'm going to want to write the Customer Experience Index post and then have it linked back. Sometimes when you're writing it, you realize, well, it's too long, I need to break it up into two. This really needs an introduction. This really needs things to link to so that people understand where I'm coming from, and those provide ones. Also sometimes comments. So I've had good luck where maybe there's a comment thread underneath a blog that you're like, you know what? Most people probably didn't see that comment thread. There's a couple comments in there that we can take and turn into a post. I even have had really long comments where I invited a commenter to sort of be a guest blogger, to take that comment and turn it into a guest post for us. So you need a warehouse to store all these raw materials. As I said, this is kind of what a note looks like for me. So notes are sort of half-baked ideas. If someone else looked at them, it wouldn't be very useful to them. But when I look at them, I can see I can see where I'm going and can work on it further. So Dunbar's number, there's simian brains. Based on the size of a simian brain, it determines how many interrelationships we can handle with other people. And apparently humans can handle about 150 interrelationships where, I know how Dana knows Lauren, and I can think about, these different interactions. And people were trying to apply that to online communities, which I thought was just silly. So that was the inspiration for this post. And there was a research article, so Research Live, kind of had an article that was really going into this, and I was like, I want to write a rebuttal to that. Plugged In, which I think is now part of Edelman, had a blog post that kind of expanded on it. And so as I was getting these different things, I was putting them in here and thinking about what it really meant. So creating over time, expanding it into something that would stand on its own eventually. Like I'll often take an excerpt from a blog. So there's a blog that I'm reading from Ray Pointer, from Andy Pettit. They've got an interesting paragraph or so. I'll grab that paragraph and think about how I might respond to it. So that might be an idea. Link collections. So a bunch of links on a topic that I'm researching. Right now, I don't see Google consumer surveys too often, but sometimes if I'm reading Christian Science Monitor in Boston or some of these others, I'll see a Google consumer survey in the wild, as it were. And so I'll take screenshots of those because I'm thinking about writing up about how Google consumer surveys works in a little more detail. When you have all of these together, you can then do interesting juxtapositions. And so Dan Zarella, who works for HubSpot, talks a lot about, can you find intersections of things that are interesting to you? He loves marketing, he loves quantifying marketing. He also likes zombies. So he wrote a blog post about zombie marketing that did really well. Another one, for some reason, he was, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, absinthe was the big cocktail, sort of throwback to a 1920s cocktail, and very sweet. And so it was sort of the current fad. And also the current fad was to put USB devices in everything. So he made, as a joke, a post about an absinthe spoon with a USB. And it took off all over the place. It made the front page of Reddit, of Dig. He had small town reporters calling him about how are you manufacturing this. So it was an unusual juxtaposition. I haven't had the luck on Dan Zarella's scale, but I've had some luck taking different ideas. So I had mentioned the quote that I like from William Gibson about the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed. When I was rewatching War Games with my son, there's all this technology which was very cool for 1982 or whenever it came out, and yet a lot of that technology still exists today. And so I turned those two ideas into a blog post. For Valentine's Day, I took a bunch of candy hearts and talked about how you could things that they could represent different market research techniques. That became a very popular post. I was studying this very dry subject, effective commitment and calculative commitment on customer satisfaction loyalty, and I turned that into a post about Spock and your half Vulcan, half human consumers. And I was able to take sort of this dry academic paper and make it interesting to a wider audience. How do you assemble these different things? One of the other things I like to do is where you're writing longer content, Insights is really good at this. Neil mentioned that he's written books before, but also white papers. So white papers are a great source of content in your blog, but don't just write the white paper and then run it one day after another with in sequential order. If you kind of bill it as part 3 of 5, people aren't going to read it. They're just going to postpone it because it's too intimidating. Instead, kind of chop it up into blog posts, maybe drop some stuff so it's more succinct. Do it in an order that seems logical. It might not be the same order as the white paper. I always actually end the series with sort of an executive summary that then links back to all the other posts. And at the bottom of every single one of these posts, I have a call to action. This is an excerpt from this white paper. Click here to give us your mailing address and download the white paper. This is the HubSpot screen interface. Other tools have similar interfaces where they'll tell you are you using the SEO terms. So here your title's missing an SEO keyword. You should be using some of your SEO keywords when you're tagging your images. You don't have enough meta keywords. So their platform is really geared towards giving you guidance. Are you designing this post not only for humans, but so Google and our sponsor here, Bing, today, will show it some search engine love. And that's one of the things I think when you're reading someone else's blog, you can tell, are they just blogging for the passion of it, or are they blogging idle content? And you'll see that based on what words they're linking, how diligent they're being about tags and categories and so forth. And then when you're doing your headline, do you want to have the current link bait headlines? So 10 things you didn't know about content marketing tactics, and that fourth one's a doozy, which seems to be a kind of style that I see of headlines, or something more prosaic like content marketing tactics to drive leads. I've often had very good luck with the more prosaic ones in terms of building search engine credibility over time. The first one's a little, not quite my style, but it might work for you, or I think it would work, Susan, for Brain Juicer. That definitely would work for some brains. Now, I think it's important that you commit to a schedule, whether it's weekly or daily, whatever makes sense for you. And it's also important that you stick to the schedule on the days that you don't want to write blog posts. So here's kind of the good news and the bad news about blogging. There's times where you're on deadline and you're just trying to get a post up, and you'll write a really good post, far better than you realized. That might end up being one of your most popular posts. Bad news is one of these ones that you've had nurturing in your notes for 6 months, that you've done a lot of thinking and research on, you'll publish and no one will link to it or give too much attention. Other times that'll do well, you just can't tell. So definitely, I think it's, to me, it's like going to the gym. I think you just have to keep those muscles in good shape, and one way to do that is by constantly blogging. The team, it's really easy to find someone to do this. You're just looking for an intersection of industry expert who's a good writer and who understands social media. So just that intersection of those two things. So if you don't have that, like most companies, then you really do want to build a team. So find the recent graduate who loves Twitter. I was very lucky at one point to have an intern who totally loved Twitter before I was very involved with it. Or maybe you'll find someone who has an outside passion. So an employee who had this homebrew, they were reviewing homebrew recipes and different things. So they got blogging, they were blogging for fun of it, and giving them a chance to kind of apply that skill to work. Many hands make light work. You can split up some of these duties. You do need an editor, so make sure there's an editor. But for those of you who are from larger firms, if you've got more than 20 researchers, basically you can assign everyone, hey, every month I need one blog post from you. And I'm gonna hound you for that, but all you have to do every month is one blog post. The other thing to think about is considering hiring a journalist. So someone earlier mentioned that data scientists and market researchers, those are careers in demand. Journalism degrees, unfortunately, are not in demand. And PR publicists are making 2 to 3 times what journalists are. So maybe there's a journalist that you can bring over and use those skills to help your brand tell its stories. Capital expenditures. You don't have to spend money on research, but if you're already doing research on research, because you're trying to position thought leadership for webinars and conferences, definitely consider how you're going to leverage that on the blog. When I was at VC, we had great luck with some studies. We did one on customer experience IQ, where we basically just surveyed all of our customers and prospects about their customer experience practices and found out those practices that were most effective. Early on, we did, at FOBC, we did one of the first surveys of people about what they thought of the fact that market researchers were using social media, and that got a lot of play and attention from Casro and USA Today. Survey Nation was another study we did about how many surveys people were taking and how that was climbing. So think about surveys, or I'm a quant, so I'm thinking surveys here, but think about qualitative projects as well that you can leverage to generate content. And when you're designing a blog, there's lots of calls to action, and you can test these with the different platforms. You're going to have A/B tests and different things. So obviously you want people to subscribe to the blog, you want them to follow you on Twitter or Facebook. Instant contact, so your phone information, the request to call dialogue. I have a good friend who does a lot of content marketing, and she just rolled out live chat at the beginning of the summer. It's been going great for her. It's been enabling them to have more conversations with visitors to the site. Webinar signups, sign up to review a past webinar, download ebooks, download white papers. Customer case studies. So there's lots of calls to action, and you can create ads for them and test them in these platforms so that you're not showing all of these to any single visitor, but you're seeing which ones are working most effectively for you. And so then in terms of your physical plant, I've been an early adopter of Hubspot, but I didn't intend this to be an ad for Hubspot. It has actually become more expensive as they've moved up market. So I actually don't use it anymore, but it was great for me at a certain stage. And I do recommend it if it fits your needs. What's nice about Hubspot is it integrates lots of different things. It integrates a blog, SEO tools, A/B testing of offers, email nurturing. Otherwise, you can cobble things together. So, I have clients who are using WordPress, Optimizely, Constant Contact, and we kind of have those working together. WordPress is very affordable, lots of add-ons, so it's highly customizable. So those are the typical things that I recommend. So hopefully we have some time for some questions.
We do.
Great stuff, Jeff. So article marketing. So let's say your article is published somewhere else and you want to repurpose that. I mean, obviously you can spin articles, but there's negativity with that. Is there a way to repurpose content in multiple places without getting dinged from an SEO perspective?
Yeah, so the SEO algorithms do change. Usually they're not as, they don't like content that's been published elsewhere as much. So one of the things we'll do is as we get into this rhythm is there are times where we'll then pitch blogs for other blogs. We'll pitch it for Green Book or for one of the industry association blogs or as an article. So Green Book actually is very good about republishing blogs that you've already published. And they've been doing it long enough that they have enough SEO juice that it's not really, and plus they have enough original content. But you don't want to have it's a tough balancing act. But depends on the site as well, whether they'll take those kind of reposts. Some will, some won't.
We've got a question over here.
Yeah.
Hey Jeff, great stuff. Love taking the vertical and going deep with us. So thank you. You answered questions that I had along the way. About your team, it's good to know. How big is your team? Your editor, how do you, are you 24/7 on with your brain, or how do you turn it off? Or is it your child saying, Daddy, shut down the laptop? Because it seems to me that you're scraping for ideas all the time. And how do you then shut off your brain? It's one question. I want to ask you one more thing.
Yeah. Well, for the team, so I sold my company. There we did have other executives who would contribute. But I was sort of editor-in-chief and primary writer, but there were other people who assisted, especially some of the research on research. So sort of one person who was the main responsibility, and then other people who would contribute. In terms of, I think you would talk about if you're passionate about this industry, you're passionate about this industry. So, I love this industry. I owe it a lot, and so I think about it a lot. And I do need to work on being more present for my 9-year-old and not thinking about something. But usually, I'll tell Siri, remind me tomorrow about this idea. And so I'll try to when I have it, I don't want to lose it. And so before I would write it back when I had a Palm Pilot. I'd write it on my Palm Pilot. But now I tell Siri, remind me of this, or add a note to this. And so that's kind of where, okay, I thought about it. I put it there so that then when it's time for me to work on my next post, I'll integrate that into my notes and idea management.
Okay, sorry, one more question. So, and I'll give it to you. So, for you, blogging. Some people won't read your blogs. Blogs can have their 5-day glory, or do you believe people should blog for posterity, like chapters in my book eventually, or blog for the moment, or what do you do?
So I think you need a mix, and so there is certainly evergreen content that you're going to explain what concept testing is, and that's going to have to be appealing to your prospects, and that's probably, the idea of concept testing will probably be with us for another 20 years, even if exactly how we're doing it's changing. So there's certainly evergreen content. And then there's also posts, like typically the posts that I write for Green Book are, here's the 10 things people are talking about, which, are not posts that have legs. So I think you need a mix of the topical and then of evergreen content. And for the book, I don't know how Niels does it, but I will often kind of outline a white paper that I eventually want to write. And I will think about it in the open on the blog, because that way I can see how if people push back on things or if they have comments, and then I can turn it into a a white paper and then maybe add the call to actions to the old post. So I sometimes, for me, writing is actually a way to help me crystallize some things. And so it'll be sort of a source of raw materials for other content.
We can do one last question.
My question is pretty simple. Roughly how much time are you talking about spending on this in a day or a week?
Yeah, so typical blog posts for me is about 2 hours. It depends on the nature of it. So when I was first starting, I had the luxury of being part of a roll-up where there were 6 company founders and I didn't know what to do with us. So I was the decorative founder and I got to spend half my time, so I was spending 4 hours a day blogging. But now I don't need to spend that much time. I've kind of hopefully built the blogging muscle and the writing muscle and can do it quicker than I could initially when I first started out.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Okay, we've got another networking break. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes.